Thank you. I would like to start by thanking the Magnifico Rettore, let me try this, Eccellentissimi Capitani Reggenti, close. Professor Anna Corradi and Michela Zanoni. Thank you. And of course, all my colleagues and friends. Now, before I start, I am going to get a glass of water, and you should stretch. Now, I must warn you, many of you have copies of the speech that I wrote. This is not what I will say. As a professor, I know nothing is more boring than for me to read this speech to you. So I will tell you my thoughts. They will be the same as in the speech, but they will be said differently. And I apologize to those for whom English is difficult. Suppose that you wish to cross the street, and I see cars coming, but there are no drivers. These are the automatic cars of the future, but the future is only 3 or 4 or 5 years away. Almost every car manufacturer has promised self-driving cars by the year 2021. So now I am crossing the street, and here comes a car with no driver. How do I know it has seen me? How do I know, how can I say, go on? Or how can it tell me to go on? Now, actually, that isn't such a hard problem if it is just me and the car. But obviously, there will be many cars, and there will be many pedestrians, and people on bicycles, and motor scooters, and motorcycles, and skateboards. What then? We don't know the answer to those questions. It is one of the problems we are doing research on at my university. It is a design problem. How should we design things? When should the car break the law? Look, it is important for all of us to break the law at times because it is the only safe way to drive. If we are driving down a 2-lane street and there is a car double parked or some problem in the street, I have to go into the wrong lane to go around it. Or maybe a tree is blocking the street. What do we do then? Or what do we do when people say, haha, these are automatic cars. They are programmed not to hit me. So I can ignore the traffic lights and the signs. I can just walk in front of it, right? Or I can drive in front of it. If I have a manual car, I can do anything I want because it will not hit me. Now, how do we design that car for the motorcycles in the street in, oh, I don't know, Napoli or Shanghai? In Shanghai, the motorcycles go any way they like to. They drive on the left side of the street, on the sidewalk, on the right side of the street. They go back and forth. They go around an automobile and come back the wrong way and then go up the other way. How do we design for that? And the answer is, we don't know yet. The problem we face as engineers who do the design are very logical. And they think it is a matter of logic. We just need better technology and everything will be solved. And I have to keep explaining to them that no, you have people there. But then the engineers explain to me how people work, and they're very logical about it. And I have to say, no, you have to take people the way they are, not the way you want them to be. Logic is an artificial way of thinking. It was invented by the Greeks and the Romans. It is difficult to teach to students. If logic were the way that we thought, it wouldn't be difficult to teach. So we have to study people. And what modern design is about the relationship between technology and people to try to make society better. But here's another problem. We are also working in healthcare. Healthcare, I will talk about the United States, but I suspect it is the same here as well. Here's a simple example. A child, the leg hurts. The child does not pay it much attention. Maybe after a week or so, the child mentions it to the mother. The mother says, "Oh, it is all right, it will go away." But after another week, the mother starts to worry. So the child brings the mother brings the child into the physician, what we call the general practitioner, their home physician, who looks at it and has no idea but says, "Go get an X-ray." So then you must make another appointment and go and get an X-ray. And then you wait for the X-ray to be sent to the radiologist, and the radiologist to call the physician to say, something looks difficult here. And then the physician calls the mother, and then they must make another appointment and go see the physician. And the physician says, "You should get, a biopsy, a sample of the skin here." And so, okay, now we have to make an appointment with the physician who will do the biopsy. And we go there, and now we go home and we wait for the physician to send it to the laboratory, and the laboratory to call the physician to call your doctor. And then the doctor says, "Oh, you should come in and we should talk about it more. You should go and get an MRI and a CT scan." Two different kinds of scans. And these are two more appointments and more phone calls. And eventually they say, "We think this is cancer. So you should see a cancer specialist, an oncologist." Yet another appointment. And the oncologist says, "Oh yes, I think you should be treated with radiation." Because there are three major ways of treating cancer: radiation, surgery, and chemicals. Sometimes people get all three. So now we make an appointment with the radiation oncologist. And then they do a number of analyses, and then they decide how to treat you. And maybe they say, "We'll give you the standard treatment." So it's just 15 minutes, 30 times, once a day. 15 minutes, 30 times once a day, that's 5 weeks of treatment every single day. I can go on, but let me just explain how the physicians like to describe what is going on. They draw a diagram. You've probably all seen them. It's a little block diagram. There's a square here to see the primary physician, and then an arrow to see the X-ray technician, and then you get to the oncology to see the oncologist, who then an arrow to the radiation physicist, and then an arrow to the dosimetrist, and then an arrow to the technician, and then all of these wonderful arrows. We were asked to study the radiation oncology department. And so we went and we sat and we watched. We have an anthropologist working for us who sits and observes all that goes on. We follow what happens in a clinic. We follow the patient from place to place. We follow the physicians. We follow the nurses. We follow the radiation physicists. And we discovered something very interesting. This box, this diagram, looks very nice. You go from here to here and to here, and the treatment is very orderly and very wonderful. There's an arrow that connects the boxes. what goes on inside the arrow? Nobody ever talks about it. But what goes on inside the arrow is the communication between one group and the next group. And that communication is often faulty. It doesn't have everything. It can't have everything. This physician says, you know, I think that we should radiate here, but I'm not 100% certain because I think there's a little spot here and we should be careful about that. But the physician doesn't write that down because it's not clear, they're not sure. So where does that ever get transmitted? And when does it all come together? The problem of transitions in medical systems is huge. Medical error is now the third largest cause of death in the United States. It is a very bad problem, and a lot of medical error is a result of transitions. When you go from one group to another group, or for that matter, you're in the hospital and now it's midnight and the nurses leave and new nurses come in, or the physicians change. Does all the information necessary to treat someone get transmitted to the next? No, it doesn't. It's a very difficult problem. It is a design problem. So I am here to tell you that design in the future is not what you think design is. Probably most of you think that design is, well, making something look pretty, making something that is attractive, that we enjoy, that we'd like to have for our home. And all of that is true. But that is only one kind of design. Design is really a way of thinking. In fact, as we heard, the purpose of a university really is to train people how to think. Now, one of the problems that we have is that we train people how to solve problems. Now that sounds like a good thing, doesn't it? Do we train people? We train our physicians, we train our business people, we train our engineers, we train everyone how to solve problems. And I often see that when you give someone a problem, they're really good at coming up with a solution. They never ask whether that was the right problem to solve. What we do as designers is, I have a rule. Whenever I am asked to solve a problem, I refuse to do so. Because what I want to do is understand why that is a problem. And after I am told why that is a problem, I ask, why is that? And then again, I ask, why is that? The Japanese call this method the 5 whys. You should ask why, till you get the fundamental. You don't really have to ask 5 times, but that's the spirit. If you solve the right problem, quite often everything else goes away. The United States, like most countries, is facing a water shortage. California especially is running out of water. So we are all urged that we should conserve. So designers all around the world are rushing to solve this problem, and they're devising clever things on your shower and clever things on your faucets to tell you if you're taking the shower for too long or using a little bit too much water. And it's all wonderful solutions. We also have designers who love to hear about problems, say, in other countries. So in the United States, young designers love to go to Africa or to India or to Indonesia to try to help the people there. And they go for a week and they find some problem and they come back and they do a wonderful solution and they get a prize. Well, does the prize ever make any difference? Does that solution ever get implemented? No. Because first of all, they are solving the problem from their own point of view, not from the point of view who live in the community. And second of all, they are often solving the simple problem, not the real problem. So it is very important that we do not solve the symptoms. If I stop the leaky faucet in my kitchen sink, I do save water. But if I think of this as a system, what is a system of water distribution? Where does most of the water go? only a small percentage goes to homes. The biggest percentage of water goes for manufacturing and for agriculture. In agriculture, 50%, which is the biggest use of water in California, 50% of the water never gets to the farms. It evaporates on its way to the farm. So why are we spending our time trying to solve the leaky faucet? Is that important to do? Yes. Is it the critical problem? Absolutely not. So what we must do in design is learn to ask and solve the critical problem. And what I like about that is, well, look, think about who a designer is. So what is special about the field of design? First of all, design is one of the few fields in the university that actually makes something. Most of the universities consist of people who analyze. The goal is to increase our knowledge, our scientific knowledge, our engineering knowledge. It's interesting, even most engineers do not actually make anything today, but they do a good analysis. Engineering is a form of applied mathematics. So designers make something. And second, in order to make something, you have to know something about every component in the way. You must know something about the political problems. You must know something about economics. You must know something about business. You must know something about engineering and technology. You must know something about people. And you must have deep knowledge of the particular topic that you are studying. This makes design very interesting because the university is divided into specialties, vertical specialties, where we have people who are among the best in the world at understanding their narrow point of view. Designers basically don't know anything. And I say this as a compliment, so don't get concerned if you are a designer in the audience. Designers don't know much of anything, but they know how to bring it all together. Here's a way I like to think of it. If you measure a person's knowledge by how much area there is, this is this specialized, amount of knowledge, and it's this wide and very deep. So that's how much they know. This area and this area and this area. And we promote people because they know so much and they're so good. Well, the person who's a generalist has this kind of knowledge. So in any field, they know just a little bit. But they know just a little bit about every field. So the area is just as much. They know just as much, but they have a different kind of knowledge. They are able to take the knowledge from across the university and apply it and make a difference in the world. Now, that is a really difficult thing for a university to understand. So design has a very weird place in the university. Design is not thought really as an academic department. Because when you ask an academic, oh, Norman, this guy Norman, works in electrical engineering, how good is he? And the person says, oh, well, I think he published a paper a long time ago, but there's not very much. And then you ask somebody in cognitive psychology, oh, yes, he published some books, but a long time ago and not much recently. And then you ask somebody in any other area, computer science, oh, yes, he did this, but that was some... You don't know very much, so you don't get promoted. But yet the designers are the ones who actually make things happen, and they know a lot, and they depend upon everyone else in the university. They tie the university together. So this is a problem that designers all across the world are facing. I've talked to designers at some of the best design schools in the world, and they're really excellent people. But they're all having trouble convincing anyone that we do something that's worthwhile. Now, part of the problem is design itself. So let me give a bit history of design. This is in the paper. Design started off, really, in the commercial industry, the making of Wedgwood china in England, Great Britain, as a way of making inexpensive china that the everyday family could have. And over time, design comes about mostly as a specialization of either architecture or art. And design was primarily of a craft. And designers are wonderful craftspeople. They put together beautiful objects. And the training of a designer includes a tremendous amount of learning of these skills and learning how to do unusual things, learning to be incredibly creative with today's technologies to do products and communication vehicles and services. But design is still mostly a field of craftsmanship. They're a field of practitioners. And to be in the university, we have to be extending our deep understanding of some topic, which is what I have been doing all of my life, trying to understand the fundamental principles, and in recent years, the fundamental principles of design. What makes something exciting, wonderful, emotionally pleasant? What makes something understandable? What makes something that solves the problems? There is remarkably little science in all of this, in part because designers are primarily trained in art and architecture. And what we really need to do in design in the future is bring in evidence, good evidence, because right now we have design methods, and people who teach them believe firmly in their methods. But there is almost no evidence that says this is the appropriate way to train a designer. We need to start gathering evidence so that we can say, yes, this is a better way to train. This is a better way to approach this problem. We might have to have many different ways because we approach so many different kinds of problems. The way I approach a problem in healthcare might be different than the way I approach a problem in water conservation. And we also must make sure that designers understand more about the world. Here's another example. Some friends of mine at the Royal College of Art in London analyzed the ambulance system in London. And they realized that the ambulance system could be much improved because ambulances always were in the hospitals. And when they were needed, you would call the hospital, and the ambulance would have to rush out to the place, pick up the person, and go back to the hospital. And so they said, well, the ambulance should be in the city, throughout the city where the problems occur. And then when there's a problem, it doesn't take so long for the ambulance to get there, and then they can go to the hospital. And they should have equipment in the ambulance so they can start doing analyses. And so when the patient gets to the hospital, the physicians already know what the problem is. So they did a very careful study. They did this together with the Imperial College, the engineering college in London. And they, after 3 or 4 years, they proposed a way of doing the ambulances throughout the city of London that would dramatically enhance the ambulance service at no extra cost. They even redesigned the ambulances to make them better equipped for this purpose. Recently, we had a conference in Shanghai in which we were discussing these kinds of complex problems, the healthcare problems I'm talking about, and the ambulance problem. We had a group of the kinds of designers who look at these very complex, we call them socio-technical problems. And I thought this was a wonderful presentation. And so afterwards, in the question period, I asked, that's really wonderful, and you did this 10 years ago, yes? So tell us how well this is working. And they said, nothing has happened. This was a project that took several years. The mayor of the City of London said it was a brilliant project and that it should be implemented. They received several international design prizes, but nothing happened. Design is a way of thinking and proposing solutions, and that isn't enough. We have to have design thinking, but we must also have design doing. Because if your work does not get done, it doesn't matter how brilliant it was. And the reason it doesn't get done is actually well known by political scientists. When you try to solve a large problem, it means everybody rises up in opposition. The labor unions are concerned, the physicians are concerned. The people whose homes might be next door to where the ambulance is going to be located are concerned. Everybody has some reason why it's a good idea, but don't do it near my house. In the United States, we call this NIMBY, not in my backyard. I love what you're doing, but no, not where I live. In fact, in Palo Alto, where I live, I have two homes. One of them is in Palo Alto, California, the home of Silicon Valley. There is where the worst cell coverage is in probably all of California, because that's where all the wealthy venture capitalists live. And so when the phone company wants to put up a cell tower, they say, our cell service is horrible. Will you do something about it? But I will not let you put up a cell tower near my home. Well, those are real problems that we have to face. Now, what discipline do you know of that has to face all of these issues? It has to solve the social problems, the technical problems, the design problems, the economics, and these kinds of political problems. And that's why it's such a powerful discipline, and we need to have more of it. Meanwhile, design is today a practice, producing beautiful, wonderful objects. And Italy is actually quite famous for that. I know you are not Italy, you are San Marino, but you are very close. And the design department here has actually won a number of prizes for their excellent work. But the skills required to do this are very different than the skills required to solve the health problem, or the skills required to solve the ambulance problem, or the skills required to solve any of the complex social problems that we face in the world today. We need different skills. But the skills of a designer in the way they think, or the way we think in approaching a problem, I believe is what is needed. And the skills of bringing together all of the university is what is needed. In fact, I really don't like university departments because they become too narrow, and often the professors lose track of how the work is used. I discovered this when I left the university and went to work at Apple. I discovered that all my theories were very nice, but actually they were missing a lot of information that would be necessary to make them work. And I discovered that going back and forth from the university to business was very important in improving the work I do in theory, because when I try to apply it, I discover where we are wrong and what we need to do. We need to change the training of designers, I believe, but we may need to change the university. So I would like to recommend, this is a very difficult recommendation, it may never happen, instead of having departments, we have problems. So we don't have a department of, say, electrical engineering, but we might have power distribution. Because power distribution will include electrical engineering, but economics, and political science, and civil engineering, and even manufacturing. We might have another department of water conservation, which again, or energy conservation, which will cut across many disciplines. And the same in medicine. What we are trying to do in medicine is not cure sick people. We want to make it so they do not get sick in the first place, which means treating it as a system. So here is the new design. It is, first of all, always being focused on the people for whom this is being designed. And the people means all the people. In a hospital, it does not mean the physicians. It means the patients and their families and the physicians and the nurses and the technicians and the administrative staff. It means treating this as a higher system. It means a person is living at home. They are sometimes monitoring their own health. And today, people who are athletes like to monitor their steps, their activity, their pulse, maybe their blood count. Those important data. We now have genomic data. We now have the microbiome data. We have huge amounts of data. And so when a person comes in to the physician, complaining of something, the physician today will not, or in the future, will not be able to say, oh, I understand, take this medicine and go home. Rather, the medication will be tailored to the particular individual, that you have this type of genetics, and so this medicine will work for you, and this one will not. And when the person is treated, or maybe goes to the hospital, eventually they get released and go back home. And we should think of this whole cycle, from being well to being well. And when we start thinking of the entire cycle, well, we actually have a very different view about what goes on. There's also something else happening in the world. Because of the power of the computer, and that so much knowledge is what we say in the cloud, it's available any place to anybody. And because some of the tools are very powerful, you can have 3D printers at home, or if you don't have it at home, you can make your plans and mail them someplace, and they will mail you back the part. There's all sorts of things happening. And so we suddenly have the power of individuals. So here's an example. In San Diego, we are working with a company called Dexcom, and they make a glucose meter. This is something that measures your blood sugar level. And this is very important for people with diabetes. If you have diabetes, you may realize you have to prick your skin once or twice a day, or when you think you need to, and no one likes to do that. But if you can wear a blood glucose meter, then it is automatically sampling your blood sugar level all the time. And so it can always be telling you when you need to take an insulin shot, for example, or when you might want to eat some sugar, or whatever. Well, there's another company that makes an insulin pump that automatically injects insulin into the body. If you could only combine those two, you would have an automatic pancreas, an artificial pancreas, that would just automatically take care of you. If you went for a run, it would automatically give you a little bit of insulin when you needed it. If you ate too much sugar, well, the same thing. Or if you didn't eat, the same sort of thing. But doing this is very difficult. And you need to pass all sorts of regulatory problems. And meanwhile, some kid, a young 25-year-old engineer who had diabetes, said, I don't want to wait for this to be solved, so I'm going to solve it myself. And what he did is he bought one of the glucose monitors from Dexcom, and he took it apart and figured out how it worked. And then he bought one of the insulin pumps from the company that made it, and he took it apart, figured out how it worked, and then he hooked them up together and plugged it into his body. And it really helped him dramatically. So he published everything he did on the internet. And pretty soon in the United States, we have several hundred people who have made their own artificial pancreas that is helping them. Now, it's really interesting what the company's response was. So this company, Dexcom, discovered this person had taken apart their stuff and published it all on the internet, and had made this artificial pancreas. And what they decided to do was, well, in the United States, the normal response is you sue the person and take them to the law courts. But Dexcom was very clever. They hired the person. And so the person is now working with them, and they have promised that as that person develops better and better techniques, it will all be published on the internet so anyone can use it. That's a very different way of doing business, and it's a sort of a designerly way of doing business. How do we change our educational system so that designers have a place in the university, so that designers can do both the wonderful craft work they're doing, or maybe can also do this design thinking to approach the deep sociological problems we have, not by themselves, but working together with all of you who are experts in the issues. And how do we make it so that design has more of a scientific base, so we can demonstrate that, yes, this method helps, and no, this method is not so good, or maybe this method works only in this special condition. So the title of my paper was, not the paper you have, but the one that it comes from. It's called, When You Come to the Fork in the Road, Take It. Now, a fork in the road is when you have a road and suddenly there's one way goes this way and one way that goes that way, and the question is, which path should I take? Yeah, technology is wonderful. It's actually a difficult problem to figure out how to make the ring audible to the person who needs it and not annoying to everybody else. If you're two paths, which path do you take? Well, I took my, my title, when you come to a path in the road, take it, from a saying by a famous American baseball player who was famous for lots of his sayings. And one of them was, when you come to a path in the road, take it. And that's what I recommend for designers. It doesn't matter which one you do. They're both excellent paths. Now, it may be difficult to take both paths because the kind of design thinking that we do and scientific reasoning is different than the kinds of craft skills that make so many beautiful objects. And we need both of these in the world. And one of the things I would love to do is understand how to teach both so people can be good at both, so we can take both paths. And I don't know the answer to that. And I had a big discussion this morning with faculty in the design department trying to understand how we might do this. It's difficult. But the reason I moved from engineering to psychology and then recognized that psychology and engineering was a wonderful combination to do design, to understand how to make things better for people, was to try to introduce across the university these principles of thinking and these principles of making something happen. So I am delighted to be here in San Marino, obviously deeply honored by the honor you have awarded me. But I'm also here to see if I can move you a little bit, to help move design into a much more important place in our lives, because actually all of you are designers. You may be amateurs at it, but you are designers in many ways in your life. When you make decisions about how to do something, when you even decide where to sit in a room, maybe you sit at the rear end in case I'm very dull and you want to leave. You're making design decisions. But designers are trying to make decisions that are important to our fundamental lives. And so we deserve a place in the university, but we have to earn it. So I'd love to see if the university will change, but I also would love to see if the field of design will change. So that is my message. The future of design is moving design thinking into practice in the places where it matters, including, I believe, part of the training of everyone who goes through a university. Because we can teach you design thinking, very quickly, and it changes your life. You go around the world curious. You go around the world asking, why? So I'll leave you with one final comment about the power of knowing nothing. I am often called in by companies to help them with a problem, and sometimes companies that I have no knowledge of. I have no idea what they're talking about. And one of the things we learn in the design profession, or any consultant learns, is when you're brought into a new area, you have to quickly learn about the area. So you find the experts in the area, and you ask them questions. You have them give you tutorial lectures, and you ask them questions. And I don't know very much, and so I ask stupid questions. What is a stupid question? A stupid question is usually one where people say, oh, God, why are you asking that? Everybody knows the answer to that one. Okay, but I don't. So what's the answer? And then I say, well, why is that? And they will usually say something like, well, that's the way we've always done things. And, well, why is that? Stupid questions turn out to be the most powerful questions of all, because many times a stupid question is a stupid question. But many times what a stupid question is asking about the fundamental beliefs in a field. And as soon as you start questioning the fundamental beliefs, that's when you can make a real change. Because if you change some of those beliefs, everything else changes, and often in a wonderful way. So let me conclude by encouraging all of you to ask stupid questions. Thank you.
Ringraziamo il professor Norman per la sua Lectio Magistralis, per le sue parole.